Hey folks, it's Liv. Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new, I use he and pronouns, and we've survived. For everyone living in Victoria, we've survived day 3 of our 7-day lockdown. So hopefully it ends on Thursday night and Friday everything's open again. But I have a feeling it's gonna go on longer than 7 days, but that's okay. Um, yeah, I was talking to my friend today about some of my trans experiences, and then I'm like, why don't I just make a video about it? So I'm just gonna be talking about different, mostly unpleasant and uncomfortable experiences that I've gone through because I'm trans. Yeah. So I want to rewind back to when I started socially transitioning last year, but I hadn't started testosterone yet. Um, this is after I got my haircut that marked the beginning of my transition journey. So, and also this was before I changed my name to Liv. So August last year was when I changed my name to Liv. But living between the period between February last year and like August, I went by my birth name still. I didn't have dysphoria with my birth name, so I went with my birth name. But in August, I changed my name to Liv. Socially. Um, so I was misgendered a lot, even though I looked like a guy. Whenever I open my mouth to talk, people would just think they misgendered me as a guy, but they thought I was a girl, but I'm not. And that happened so many times. It became very uncomfortable because I didn't want to be like, explain, like, hey, I'm not a girl. Like, I actually use he and pronouns, and just because my voice is high it doesn't mean I'm not a man. I didn't want to out myself and like explain things to people, so I just tolerated being misgendered because last year as well I was very insecure in my own identity. Like I didn't have the self-confidence that I have today at this point in my journey, so I just sort of kept quiet about that. It's just like suffered in silence. And I realized looking back now that the trauma from all of these seemingly minor experiences, definitely not minor because it was really bad for me, but it's these experiences all sort of build up on top of each other, and then like it's like a trauma accumulated over time. Yes, that happened. It was so cringy, very cringy. As for bathrooms, when I first came out as trans and got my hair cut, I still used women's public bathrooms because I was too scared to use the men's bathrooms because I was scared of being harassed and attacked, and I wasn't self-confident in myself. But using female women's restrooms was so triggering for me and so dysphoric. But then again, I had to pay, and sometimes there weren't any accessible bathrooms, and I had to use the bathroom, so I used women's bathrooms, which is so dysphoric. Um, and then I started using accessible bathrooms until I got the confidence to use men's restrooms. And ever since I built confidence in using men's restrooms. I've been using it ever since to this day. Back to the voice thing again. So, last year I went to get a few COVID tests. They were all negative, but I went to get tested. Um, and when they so in where I got tested, like it's a drive-through thing. It's not like a pedestrian walk-in testing clinic. It's like everyone stays in their vehicles. And when it got to me, the person like doing the info intake from like name, gender, birthday, address, all of that stuff. When I remember one of the tests, the person looked at me and they ticked male. So on the form, they only had male and female. It literally had, oh, it's not inclusive of non-binary people and gender diverse people. It's a male, female, two boxes, very binary. And the person ticked male when they looked at me because I looked like a guy. And then I started talking, and then they crossed out male, and then they ticked female because my voice was high and it didn't sound like a typical guy, as in deep. So they crossed out female, and then they crossed out male, and then they ticked female, and I'm just like, oh dear god. Why must you do this? I didn't say it to them, but I said in my head, it's like, oh my god, can you not do that? Can you not? And another test, um, they looked at me, the person taking the info, they looked at me very confused because I looked like a guy, but then when I was talking, I my voice was high and like feminine sounding. So and then the person was like really confused about which one to tick for me, like male or female. And they're like, "Can I see your license?" So this was before I changed my license, and I still had a photo. I used the photo on my license was one that was before I came out as trans and started transitioning. So I had like me and long hair and everything. And then they looked at my photo and they saw like the pre-transition, the pre-transition left, and then they tick female, and I'm like, oh my god, dysphoria, cringe, dysphoria, discomfort. Yeah. Also, before I got my new ID, legal ID, with my transition photo and everything, um, there was one time I bought a video game and it was like R18 plus and they needed to check ID because of the rating R18 plus that game. And the worker was like, can I see your ID? And then I showed them my license. Again, this is before this license was my pre-transition photo, and I'm like, just ignore the photo. That's an old photo. But then the person working at the game store was very like cool about it. It's like no worries at all. And then yeah, that was a positive experience. Like it's like no worries at all. And they checked my birthday, so I was of legal age, so they sold me the game. So that was a positive experience, which I didn't expect to be positive. So there are some very friendly allies in the world, but it's hard to tell who is an ally and who is not an ally. For me personally, I can't look at someone and be like, okay, you're an LGBT plus ally and you are not. Like it's very hard to tell unless they're like doing something very obvious or wearing something very obvious. You can't really tell. Then in August last year, I started going by Lev socially. So that was very interesting. Getting used to the name change, telling everyone in my life that I go by Lev. Um, it was awkward for me because legally I was still recognized by my birth name, so I changed my legal name and legally recognized gender marker in March of this year. So literally like just over 2 months ago, not a very long time ago. So yes, I was going by Lev in a social context, but legally I was recognized by my birth name everywhere. And so what I had to do was like when I go to the doctor or anything that required legal ID, I was like, oh hey, I'm blah. Um, unless they're like unless they allow me the option of using my chosen name rather than my birth name, I'm like, I'm blah. And whenever I booked an appointment for a doctor, I'm like, hi, this is blah, my birth name. And it was just so, it was very dysphoric for me because I was like it's like I'm living a double life. Me, myself, my truth as Lev, and then the version of me that was pre-transition, pre-coming out as trans, and the version of me that was like recognized by for legal reasons, the version of me that's like recognized as my birth name legally. So it was very dysphoric everywhere. Um, I mean LGBTIQ plus places I've been to, like the clinic I go to get my testosterone injections, they're very chill and cool about it. They're like, we'll call you by Liv, and we just use blah birth name for Medicare purposes and all that. So there that was chill, but then most of the places I'm just like, hi, I'm blah. Even when I apply for jobs, I applied using my birth name, which gave me so much dysphoria. I'm like, this isn't me, and I wasn't really happy applying for jobs because I was not presenting my truth essentially because it was not recognized legally, and like I assumed I had to use my birth name because work legal reasons. I hadn't changed my name yet, so it was a very not stressful, I guess miserable experience throughout that whole thing before I got before I was legally recognized as Liv. And the reason why I didn't change my Liv, didn't change my Liv, the reason why I didn't change my name to Liv, like legally, like immediately after I started going by Liv socially, is because I wanted to make sure that it was a name that I was comfortable with and I was comfortable using in all contexts, like, social, and then accessing support. But like if they're LGBT friendly, I'll just go by Liv. I just want to get a feel for it, to see whether how I felt about it, basically over the long run. Like, I'm not gonna make impulsive decisions just in the moment. Whenever I do things, I think about the long term, and I wanted to try Liv for a few months to see whether it fit with me or not, or whether I should go by a different name. I definitely knew at that point, August 2020, that I didn't want to use my birth name anymore. That's why I went by Liv. So I gone by Liv or Levi. Um, and so, like, August last year to March, I still felt very comfortable using Liv. I'm like, this feels right for me. This name, I can see myself in Liv. And that's when I decided to go get my name changed legally and my gender marker recognized. Because I didn't want to do both, like, independently and separately, and I was scared if I changed my name to Liv immediately, and after a few months I realized the name I chose may not have been something I wanted permanently. So I that's why if I change it my name and then I have to go through the changing name process again, it's just too much hassle, and they take it very seriously. I think they said the government said you can only change your name 2 or 3 times in an entire lifetime. So it was not really a light decision. Like, I didn't wanna impulsively do things. So yes, I'm legally recognized by Lev now, but yeah, I the period of testing was really important for me. But still, oh, my legal ID was just my birth name everywhere, and it was just not fun. Living a double life, and it drained me so much. Another experience is at the end of last year in December, I got involved in a minor road accident. Like, someone accelerated into me while I was like waiting at an intersection to turn. The person was the person put the vehicle on brake, and then I hadn't really moved. I didn't even move, and then the person just stepped on the accelerate and then just ran into my car's tail. So that was not fun. But then when the person looked at me, they were like, "You okay, mate?" Because they saw me. I look like a guy. Um, and then this was before I started testosterone as well. So they saw me as a guy, and then we showed each other our licenses to get like to exchange details. And then the person saw the pre-transition photo again of me. It was me with long hair. It was, and then I'm sure the person felt very weirded out. Me like, oh. But yeah, it was so uncomfortable. It's like, I don't like people. They saw my old photo. Plus, they saw my birth name. I'm just like, these are just like low key trans experiences that I would never experience if I was a cis guy. Another thing. So last week, I haven't got all of my legal ID changed yet. I got the main ones, but there was still some few things I had to change still. And I followed up with this one ID because I sent them my documents a month ago. And they haven't sent me my new ID yet, so I called them to follow up with that. And then the person was like, "What is your?" I'm like, I applied for a new ID because I changed my name. And my name's Liv. And then the person was asked, "What is your birth name?" Like, they had to know because for that ID, it's still recognized under my birth name and not Liv. So that was so cringy. I mean, the person asked me, "What is your birth name?" Like, I just like I felt like everything. I just felt so dysphoric and triggered, and it just like everything just sunk inside of me. I had this feeling inside of me, just like, I don't know how to explain it, but like it was not fun. And I'm like, but yeah, I spelled out my name because I wasn't gonna dead name myself. Even spelling it out made me feel so uncomfortable, but I had to do it because they had to know my birth name because they couldn't find, like, otherwise they can't find me in the system. So that was not fun. I'm like, yeah, and I'm just, yeah. And another thing, a different experience is that so I went to get my COVID vaccine. Um, and the nurse was doing like standard screening questions, health screening questions, like have you had COVID in the past and like any health concerns and all that. And then we got to the question about, are you pregnant? And then the nurse told me you can just laugh at that question. So when I went in to get my injection, vaccine, they're like, what is your self-identified gender? So I did this at the I guess initial screening before I got in to actually get the injection or the vaccine. And yeah, they asked me my self-identified gender, and I said male. So the nurse didn't know that I'm trans. She just saw male. I was like, oh, I think the nurse assumed I was a cis guy. That's why she's like, you can just laugh at that question. But then I'm like, actually, I could get pregnant because I'm trans. I said, well, technically, I could get pregnant because I'm trans, but I'm not pregnant. And then yeah, that was another memorable moment. It was just a bit funny. Yeah, the nurse assumed I was a cis guy, but I'm not. And I'm like, oh, I can actually get pregnant, but I'm not pregnant. So that was another thing. Yes, I guess reflecting back on our experiences, if I ask myself, would you change anything? I would be like, no, because all of these experiences made me who I am today, despite most of it being difficult, unpleasant, uncomfortable to go through. It's all part of my human journey and my human experience as living on Earth. Um, I also think it's like great insight into, I guess, what living as a trans person is like. Um, and I would not have all of this knowledge if I was a cisgender man, um, or if I was a cis woman. If I wasn't trans, I would not like have this much in-depth knowledge about trans experiences and all of that, all the nuance that trans people experience in everyday life that most cisgender people don't even think about, myself included, before I came out as trans. And before I started learning about the LGBTQ plus community, I didn't know anything. I was very uninformed about everything, and I had no idea what trans people had to go through and face every single day in society. But now that I'm living as a trans person, I'm living as a trans man, I am trans. Ever since I came out as trans and recognized my identity, I started to really understand shit. Like this is this is what trans people go through every day, and it's not what I would have expected. Um, so yeah, that's what all the thoughts I had for now. Thank you for watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next video. I forgot to say as well, like if you have any video ideas for me, or if you'd like to hear me talk about a specific thing, just like let me know in the comments or email me or something. And yeah, I'll definitely take into consideration because most of these videos I just film. Uh, one is to document my journey, and two, to get out all my thoughts and share it with the world in the hopes of it possibly helping someone. So yeah, thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next video.